Hello and welcome everyone to the fourth episode of Seal of Insight, a competitive Riftbound TCG podcast, in which today we are going to be discussing the Spiritforged Bologna regional qualifier. And I just realized I put on the overlay RC instead of RQ. We're going to ignore that. But I am joined here today by my friend and co-host Aaron McInnes. How are you doing, Aaron?
Fantastic. Just finished up the Yu-Gi-Oh grind, did well in Richmond, and now we are on the Riftbound grind. And I think Bologna was very interesting. I'm excited to talk about it and look forward to what's coming up this weekend.
Yeah, so before we dive right into Riftbound, so you said you did well in Yu-Gi-Oh, so what happened with that?
I finished 11th place at the 300 YCS in Richmond. It was like 2,200, 2,300 people, so that was neat. I lost last round to not make it, which was rather frustrating, but I made a good meta call and ended up paying off considering how little I had prepped prior. So hopefully I can do the same thing in Riftbound because it's just hard to juggle two card games now that I'm working more and have a social life. So it's pretty difficult to make it all work, but I'm going to do my best and win a best of if I can't win the event. So we'll see what we can make happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's pretty impressive. Getting 11th is quite difficult, and I mean, if you can do that in Riftbound, well, that's almost certainly a best of, unless of course you're picking like Draven, Ezreal.
Yeah.
It's like Draven, Ezreal, and like, well, we'll get into that in a minute. So anyway, So first topic for today, we can jump right into it, and I do have a screen for this. Is the results of the regional, of course. And so for anybody unaware, and I imagine most of you are aware, this is the first Spiritforged official event that we have, and it was quite a good one. I mean, we saw a lot of decks that people maybe didn't expect, and the results were not what I expected for sure. And we actually had a friend, or I think more of an acquaintance for me, but a friend for you, did actually do really well in this tournament.
Yeah, Marcus got top 8. We tested a little bit the week leading up to it, but he did, I assume, most of his prep within his local group. So big congratulations, Marcus Patel. He's a former European national champion, or like European continental champion in Yu-Gi-Oh, world qualifier, and just all-around fantastic human. So really happy for him. He said he's full committed to Riftbound for at least the rest of the year, so hopefully we'll see him perform well at Continentals whenever that takes place, and I'm excited. Hopefully I can follow in his footsteps.
I'm sure you can, Aaron. So, like I said, pretty interesting results here. I'm not going to go actually into the deck list. We're going to do that a little bit later, but I personally expected Ezreal to do well. I didn't expect, this version of Ezreal to do well. It is actually really interesting to me how Ezreal has changed as it came to the West, because China was really focused in on that pit crew strategy that was essentially, we've talked about this in previous episodes, but you play this pit crew card, you attach a cult to it, and you just go in and out on the battlefields and never give Draven draws for the Draven leader. It was a cool strategy, maybe a little bit weak into removal, but definitely has a good Draven matchup. But that isn't it all what we saw have success. It's a totally different version of Ezreal, and it's like this really control-y Ezreal that, I mean, it seemed pretty unique to me, to be honest. I was really impressed.
Yeah. I mean, so first and foremost, shout out to Alentiq. Like, he top 8 at Houston. I think he's a former world champion in Rune, so like he's just fantastic at card games. And then he showed up, and he's been preaching that he's just like gonna win the event for months, and just like backs it up and dropped 0 matches the entire tournament. If I had to guess, he dropped less than like 3 or 4 games. Like I think he dropped 1 in top 8, nothing else that I saw on stream. Like he just destroyed everyone. I think he just played very well. That deck looks incredibly hard to pilot because of like all the one-ofs and just like how like the resource management required. But I think if you play that deck well, it's probably one of the best in the game, and just obviously he's going to be on that level to execute that. I don't think an average person's going to pick up his deck and perform anywhere near as well as him. So it's definitely the pilot that carries a lot of it, but that list definitely looks like it's something worth noticing moving forward.
Yeah, and it is kind of cool that we're starting to see names. Like, I'm actually starting to recognize names in these top cuts, which is something that we talked about in, I believe it was like the second episode or something when we were doing predictions. I was like, I don't know any of these players. I can't make predictions yet. Well, pretty soon it feels like we're going to start to be able to do that, because Prismaticism has been kind of doing waves in online tournaments, and I mean, really showed up here with the Miracle Draven deck. Randy did well at the Chinese event and did well again here. And like you said, Alan ZQ, I mean, excellent performance by him, did well at the previous regional, and with a pretty innovative deck list for this one as well. So maybe, hopefully soon be able to actually do like predictions with player names, because if you and this is a good sign of the game as well. Personally, if the same players are able to consistently top, that tells me that there is a lot of player skill involved, and that you can remove at least some element of RNG to it. Even though this is a deck with color, or this is a game with colors, which tends to lend itself to poor matchups, and like, I'm not gonna say unwinnable, but it can certainly feel that way sometimes.
Polarization, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, which is like a little good segue here into our second place, which was actually an MF Aurora, who managed to beat the absolute worst matchup for Aurora in top 4, which is Victor,
Yeah.
which was very impressive to me. I mean, this player was doing pretty well all top cut. I did not expect Aurora to do well. I don't think many people, many other people did, but there's actually an Aurora here. I believe either one or both of these were Aurora Sivir decks as well. I believe the best of Sivir was an Aurora Sivir. So Aurora is still actually doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah. A Yi in top 16 as well. Yeah, looking forward to going over these lists, but it was not the spread I expected. I mean, only 3 Dravens, and then the 1 Aurelia, 1 Victor, 1 MF, 2 Ezreals. I kind of expected Ezreal to be in about the 2 range. I think that deck's pretty solid. What kind of surprised you the most about this? Was it like the lack of Dravens, the Ezreals? What are your thoughts?
Aurora can definitely high roll, so like I'm not like insanely surprised. So that's just a deck that like if it's your day, like there, if you watched his matches, it looked like it was like game 1 open ramp into Aurora, game 2 brick, including multiple times on stream game 2 where he like double called shot on 9 mana and just like still bricked the Aurora, so like he just like couldn't play the game, and then game 3 he just like opened ramp into Aurora. So it was like a pretty just like, all right, I mean like if you're gonna open that 2 out of 3 games a match, like you're gonna perform pretty well.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, like the Victor matchup, obviously, I think in your head is like really negative for Aurora. But I think his list was like to perform as well as it did. It wasn't just like targeting Aurora. His looked more unit centric. I didn't look at the list in its entirety, but based off of what I saw, it was like a lot of units and stuff. So when you see like those cheaper units and less removal, it's definitely gonna be harder. And now that the Aurora deck has hard bargain, it's gonna like lose to cards like Imperial Decree list. So that's definitely something to be mindful of when you're trying to like hard check that deck. I think just like aggression in general is a better attack than trying to like blow them out in that way. So that's something to be mindful of. Yeah, but yeah, Victor top 4ing, I was like, I had zero expectation of that, and it's not the control list, which was kind of like the anticipated deck coming into the meta. So that's, I think, like the 2 big shocks for me is just like Victor, and then like obviously Aurora like performing as well as it did, but like second place was not like, I think like sure it makes top 8, but it had like a really strong run into the finals.
Yeah, and this kind of brings me into the next topic, which was the total spread of the event. And this was something that was going to be a bit interesting to me, because the question for a lot of people is, do I go to win the event, or do I go to get a medal card, or at least go for the medal card? And it seemed like the majority of the player base decided, hey, we're going for medal cards. And it was really represented like this in the spread. Like, you'll notice there are only 200 Dravens. And I say only, 200 is a lot, don't get me wrong. But I would have expected way more. I would have expected numbers like, I think this even less than a Chinese regional that was a quarter of the size?
So this event, if I remember correctly, was around 1,200. The cap was, I think, somewhere 15. There were a lot of no-shows.
Okay. So
and most of the Chinese regionals were 512. So
Yeah.
this is, I think, comparable to like the early Chinese meta or regionals. But yeah, as the regionals went on, for those who don't know, the Chinese regionals, they were free entry, and I think best of was like a majority of the pricing to play for outside of like your invite to nationals. So once people got their invite, I think Draven started to fall off like pretty drastically. But yeah, like Draven is only 15% of the entry field. But when you look at like some of like the win rate, I'm not sure how accurate that data is. I could find it somewhere on Twitter. But if it is accurate, it was like most represented, highest conversion rate. I think it was like 15% of entry, like 30% of day 2, and it had like a 60% game win rate, which is just like absurd, like for a TCG. Like that's like n- power levels that should generally be addressed. So we'll keep an eye on how it works. Obviously, it didn't win the event. There were still three in the top eight, which is like above average in terms of representation in the tournament. So the best of pricing definitely affects how the entry looks. But I don't think it's as representative. Like if there was no best of pricing, I would say Draven's probably closer to like 30% of the entrants, and then like we may see 4 or 5 in top eight. Like I think the best of definitely plays a big role into how all this shakes out. So the deck's still very good, still very high win rate. It's like a very consistent way to make like top 64 if your goal is to make your invite. But there's definitely ways to check it, like we saw with the Ezreal deck. Like it's not going to be probably the tier 0 deck that we initially thought because of innovation that we've seen.
Yeah, I think to me the standouts here is one. It's also very funny that we have 15 Garens, which was actually one off of the number of the last Chinese regional when all the players jumped back on
Yeah.
the Garen to try and get the best stuff. But the real standout for me is Kaisa. Kaisa was my pick to win the event, to be honest. And it was
Mhm.
I came to that thought after our last episode, so it wasn't something I really got to discuss in the episode or make a prediction on. I think I said Ezreal was going to be my top non-Draven, and that
Mhm.
Draven was going to win. We'll go over predictions later. But in the week, like leading up to this event, I thought it was Kai'Sa was going to win the event. To be honest, it seemed really well positioned in our testing. It seemed really well, like theory wise. It's like it has a good Draven matchup. It beats a lot of these rogue decks. And it just didn't show up in top 16 or in top 8. I'm not quite sure what the highest placing one. Okay, so the highest placing one is top 32, at least of the
There's probably
decks
one
they
in
have
16. Yeah,
recorded.
we're missing some
Yeah,
decklists.
which
Yeah, because
seems
there was an Italian guy, Luigi Amato, who's a One Piece player, if I remember correctly. I don't know exactly where he finished. I think it was X3. Him and I think George as well were X3 or X4. So there were a couple that were in the I think the 16 range.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I thought the deck would at least get a top 8. Again, seems pretty well positioned into the meta, but maybe the Aurelias kept it down. That matchup is notoriously bad. It has some unwinnable matchups into some of these random rogue decks. Like, I mean, Ornn has to be insanely annoying unless you have exactly Thermo and they don't have the Wind Wall. Just a bunch of these little random decks. I mean, if there were Aurora decks, which we did see, I think there were at least like 3 or 4 in the top 16. That matchup still can be really annoying, especially with the creature ratios changing. I don't. The Aurora decks are playing like more heavy on the Mind Splitter and then cutting down the other units now, which is going to make the matchup even worse for Kaisa. As you do, like as soon as the Aurora starts hitting, you are losing a lot of cards.
Yeah, and your
But
time warps are getting ripped, and like whatever answers you had are no longer there.
yeah, for sure. I think the other one that's surprising to me is Fiora was really low for a deck that had a
Yeah,
structure deck, and it did well in the Chinese events. Like we saw it, it both builds of it. It was like the mid range and the hook build, and yet here we are,
yeah.
like about at the middle point. Seems pretty underrepresented
Mhm.
to me.
Yeah, I agree. Like when you have a structure deck and your deck's playable, like that's generally a recipe for like, if not success, a high amount of representation. But people are really prioritizing. Maybe prioritizing maybe the wrong word. Maybe people may be chasing EV, which is just like the highest opportunity cost of like making money by winning a medal. People may just be going for their favorite champion if they're familiar with the league IP. So it's honestly really impressive to me, like how close the number is. Like you see decks, whatever 6 through like 18 probably are all in like the 40 to 50 range. So that's really like there's just a lot of people that are like there's not like oh like 120 on Ari, which would be something that wouldn't surprise me because of Ari's popularity as a league champion, but it still ended up only being on the 4% mark, which when you add all of these percentages together, like if you look at like metal card chasers, it's probably like what's 40% of the event, maybe a little bit more, compared to people that are like actually trying to win. Obviously, like you can try to win as like Aurora Silver, but there's probably like when you look at a rec side deck, they're probably not expecting it to win the event. So like there's a lot of the meta is being influenced by this middle card pricing. So it definitely affects like your early rounds of the tournament, and it definitely can add variance to the later stages as well.
Yeah, and we had a couple friends, or at least again, in my case, more of acquaintances. Don't really know these people super well. Would like to. Maybe as I play the game more, I will. But we had, I believe, some of your friends did end up taking some of these more rogue decks, trying to go for a metal card, and had some
Yeah.
pretty bad variants, which I mean, that is kind of what you have to expect when you're playing these decks that don't have that same amount of options. Their power level is lower. You probably have some really bad matchups. It's not maybe
Yeah,
the
like a
most.
friend of mine had an already mirror match round one, lost the roll, and I don't think he was super practiced in the deck, so that's probably not going to be a recipe for success. And then I had a friend that played like a Miracle Teemo deck, just effectively trying to play Ezreal, Shell, and Teemo, and I think he was also a little out of practice and probably just had some bad variants. But I actually think there was a Teemo that like kind of overperformed. It was like X1 after day one or something like that. So he's probably gonna struggle to actually win that one out. I don't know how he finished up, but it's real. I mean, if you're playing a deck that plays purple cards, like you're gonna have a decent chance at actually performing well. Like we saw Jinx and what was the other one? I think two Jinxes in top 64, and definitely some Annies that were able to perform as well like that as well. Just Chaos is just the best color in the game right now, and there's nothing really that compares.
Yeah, the best of Jinx winner from Austin, I know, did bring Jinx to this event, and I know he got day 2. I'm not quite sure what the overall record was, but the Jinx field was actually pretty competitive, as you could just play Miracle, like Miracle Draven without the Draven, and sure, it's worse, but that is enough of a draw that I think good players would play it, right? Because you still
Yeah.
are playing good cards, you have a lot of options. And sure, your leader is bad, and your chosen champion is just a vanilla accelerate unit, but
Mhm.
that can be enough. And
Yeah.
you will be able to beat players who are worse than you with that kind of deck. So
Yeah, I mean, the Miracle deck, it is a deck that I think scales with player skill. So if you're a good player, and obviously you're at a little bit of a handicap, but if you're not playing against the top two or three decks the entire tournament, then you're probably going to be okay, and you're probably going to be able to farm against some of the other decks that, especially other metal decks. Like if you're playing a Miracle deck, like you're probably going to outpace a deck like, we'll say, Azir, like just pretty consistently.
yep, for sure. And so just hopping over, so I think Runes and Rift did. So shout out. Oh wait, okay, no, this is on the Riftbound organized play. So shout out for the statistics, but I believe they also posted the day 2 conversion. This was pretty cool too, them posting lists. I don't know how I feel about this. This was not on our itinerary, but I kind of
Yeah.
want to ask your opinion. Is how do you feel about them showing players full deck lists and sideboards on stream? And I was told, this could be wrong, I was told that you are not allowed to decline feature matches in this.
That's nuts. So if like that is public knowledge going in, the biggest gripe that I had with Houston was that that was not communicated prior to my understanding. And if you made top 64, like I think you were under the impression it was closed deck list, but it ended up not being. There, I think from my understanding, Riot's policy on it is like you don't want to one disincentivize feature match plays. Like in Yu-Gi-Oh, you can decline feature, and sometimes it's actually a good idea to if you're trying to like hide any like technology that you have built for your deck. So Riot's game plan, it sounds like, is if we pick you for a feature, we want you on there because we're trying to showcase metal leaders, whatever. Your deck list is going to get showcased, and they post all the deck lists themselves. And then it's also open deck list once you get to top cut. So they're trying to minimize any advantages that you may get from not being on feature or disadvantage you get from being on stream. Which I think if you're going to do it this way, it's pretty reasonable. A lot of other card games have open deck lists, like I know One Piece did in their top cuts. So I don't. I think Yu-Gi-Oh is actually kind of like abnormal in that regard, where it's like closed deck lists and you're able to like be a little more private with your play. But I think this is like a really I don't want to say positive, but like I like the way that they're doing it, where everything's accessible and like you're not really disincentivized to want to do that. Like you get selected, okay, you're not gonna like if you make top cut, everyone's gonna see your deck list anyways, even though it's like top 64, right? Like a lot of these deck lists are public knowledge, so I don't really have any major gripes with it. I think it's all fine, especially when it's communicated prior. You have that knowledge. So now, like when you're deck building, okay, if I have this one of in my deck list, now I have to be respectful of it. But now, like if that was not the case, you don't have to like be as like prepared. But I think it adds an additional element of the game that is generally good, and as long as that is communicated prior, all good with me.
Yeah, my only hesitation on this is, let's say you are one of these high profile players, like Prismaticism, or who have these online followings, and people know who you are. And the stream organizers, I mean, they want to get high profile players on the stream, even in the early rounds. It's good for the stream viewership. People want to see it.
Yeah.
So these players, sure, their deck list will be open in Top Cut, but let's say you're on stream round 2. Is let's just
Yeah.
again, I'm gonna say Randy. Uh,
Okay. Sure.
Everyone knows your list for the rest of the event, and it's very easily accessible. And
Mhm.
you are high enough profile that people are going to go, oh, you're playing, I know you. And then any of their friends who, like, I type in my Discord, hey, I'm playing against Randy next round. Oh, that's cool. Well, any of your friends could just go, hey, he was on stream. This is his full list. Like that.
Yeah.
That's where it gets a little bit. I don't know how I feel about it. That feels like a little
Yeah.
bit rough.
Yeah, like there's definitely a price of notoriety. I'll give a shout out to Challenger TCG. I watch a lot of their content. They
Mm-hmm.
are very like open and honest with their deck list. Like they'll post everything prior to they even enter and them entering the event. So they're like pretty comfortable with all of it. I think in this game, deck building is somewhat of an edge, but I think technical play is actually very rewarding. Like we saw Alan, like obviously his deck list is probably a little bit abnormal. There's some spice to it, but Control Israel is not like the craziest deck list that we've seen. But he just showed up and just played it as perfectly as you can as a human, right? Like he just was so prepared on it. So
Yeah.
there's definitely the price of notoriety, and that's something that you kind of just have to accept if you're trying to become a name in the community. There's obviously some benefits of that, like you have more likely to get media opportunities and sponsorships and all those things. So there's definitely selling points. It's definitely a detriment as well. But like the same thing happened to Nuku, even in closed deck lists, right? Where even if you refuse a feature match, if your opponent after a round like starts talking to his friends, like your texts are going to get out pretty quickly if you're a high profile player. So it's obviously a little bit more damning whenever it's on stream, but it's not going to be anything that's like out of the ordinary for TCGs in general. So I think it's just the price of being good and popular.
Yep. Fair enough. Fair enough. So this right here, they did release the day 2 conversion rates and the number of players. I would say this is pretty expected. Draven had by far the best conversion rate. It's actually crazy to me that 40% of 200 something Draven players made day 2.
Yeah, that's an insane number.
That's like, if you brought Draven and you have any idea what your deck does, you're making day 2, which is very that's a lot. That's a lot. And I think that this is a good number to look at. I don't think looking at top 8 specifically is a good representation of how the event went, as that is, when you're looking at top 8, especially without ASIM cut, and we can talk about this in a little bit because I personally think no ASIM is ridiculous, that there can be a, I'm not going to say variance, but player skill has a lot in the top cut. Your matchup has a lot in the top cut. And when the sample size is so small, I don't think you can like use it as a good representation of the entire event. 8 decks is not a good indicator. And like, just to give an example, Marcus, Aaron's friend, did make top 8, and he played against Aurora, round 1 of top 8. And the Aurora player got ramp Aurora game 1. And game 2 bricked, game 3 ramp Aurora game 3, and there's like very little player agency happening there, and that happens sometimes. But if that's happening one round in a 15 or 13 rounds of Swiss, you're still making top cut. But when it becomes a single elimination tournament, that one variance round, like, you're out. So.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable points. But yeah, like when you look at day 2 conversion, like you can't really look at day 1 entrance because the best of prizing affects things so heavily. But looking at the conversion percentage, I think, is a really good thing to look at with this. And you see 38% at just like an egregious number. Like that's just over double the entry number. Again, obviously, Draven is a very good deck. It beats a lot of these rogue decks as well. So that it definitely affects it to some extent. And it's hard to actually quantify what that number is. Like there is whatever 40% of the event chasing metal cards. Draven is a good matchup in a metal card, so it obviously inflates the number a bit. Whenever we get into some of these third-party tournaments that are not best of focus, we'll probably get a better idea of what Draven and like what the actual meta looks like, because this is definitely gonna like skew it in the regional qualifier circuit. So we'll see how that adjusts. But like Draven is definitely very good, potentially overtuned. But you could at this point you can kind of just like point at chaos as a whole. Like when you look at this top, whatever we're at 5 or 6, like there's only one non-purple. Ari's not purple, but then you get into like Jinx is still in there. Like
Yeah.
there's obviously exceptions, but like purple is the overwhelming majority of all of these decks.
Yeah, for sure. And I think looking at this, you can kind of pretty clearly see at least in my opinion, like a breakdown of how good the decks are. Like you have Draven, which is pretty egregiously over the top. And then you have this like kind of tier, I'm not going to call it like tier 1, but yeah, I'll call it tier 1, where it's like this 18% and above. And then where you have like Sivir, Ezreal, Kai'Sa, Aurelia, and then there's like this 17 to, I would say, like 11% where these decks are like air quote playable. I wouldn't bring them to win an event, but like Annie, like Jinx, just because it's Draven colors. Jinx,
Hmm.
Victor, Lucian, Darius, pretty good conversion randomly. And
Yeah.
then you have like the lower tier of stuff, which is like again like Volley Bear, MF. Said though, even though I will say MF did well, I don't think it's really indicative of too much. It's an Aurora deck. Um,
Yeah.
Azir, actually, this was like very low conversion rate. Rumble, Jax, yada yada. So you kind of see these tiers of decks. Uh, Funny to see that Ornn actually got 0% conversion. I would have expected to see at least like one Ornn. It is kind of a big deck that has some auto win, auto loss matchups. Anything
Yeah.
that stands out to you?
I should be doing the Orm best of Vegas is what I'm getting out of this. 'Cause I was actually joking about that for a while. If I was like fully locked in on Riftbound, I probably would do it. I think if you are doing best of Rising and you're doing like a bottom 10 deck, you actually need to be more prepared for that run than we'll say like I don't know, like a mid tier deck, just because like you said, I mean, or maybe a bad example because it has like some really like hot and cold matchups. But on average, like if your goal is to metal card hunt and you're playing a deck that has some really like subpar matchups, you need to understand the win condition of all of those. That way you can like maximize the EV of winning those games. Because like you going 5-3, but like having a good tiebreaker, like actually could be the just like the deciding factor in whether or not you win it. So knowing how to pull out those like really hard matchups with your subpar deck can make you a lot of money if your goal is to do best of Rising. So I think if your goal is to do that, like I think with the Garen guy was he won back to back in Houston and Bologna, so he obviously knows something that everyone else doesn't. Obviously the deck is underperforming, but he's able to either matchup knowledge his way through it or get lucky, however you want to view it. Like there's definitely some skill into best of hunting.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate being a Garen player because you end up playing Aurora, but you don't even get to play Mind Splitter, so you're just stuck like
Yeah.
playing like what Dead Bloom and
Dead
Mountain
Bloom
Drake
and
and
Harness Dragon, I guess, in this deck. Like I don't know what the heck you have.
that is pretty funny. That is pretty funny. So yep, day 2 meta breakdown. I mean, interesting enough. The next topic for today is the here. Let me. This is like really bad to look at. There we go. Sure, good enough. So we're back to judges. It feels like we've been here 2 weeks in a row. It's something that you have to deal with in every card game is rulings and knowing how to play the game, and it kind of is what it is. You just kind of have to deal with it. I will say there was some interesting stuff that happened at Bologna, and so we're going to go over one anecdote here, and then we can maybe talk about it a little bit. But so this was a player playing Master Yi, trying to go for the best of Yi, which actually might have been what I would have took. Interestingly enough, we talked about this. They talked about some of the techs in here, which is cool with the Rune Runner. But they're playing up against Kaisa, and it is a good matchup for Yi, as once you stick the Rune Runner, the game's pretty much over. If you do have outs for the Watchers. But what ends up happening is their opponent makes I believe they draw 2 cards, or they draw an extra card in their opening hand. So they draw an extra card in their opening hand. Yeah. And they call the judge on themselves, and it's a very easy fix, right? You just I think they just randomly take a card out of your hand and put it back or whatever. Nothing too big of a deal there. And then later in the game, the opponent draws 2 cards from their decks for turn, and then they just put one back without saying anything. And then the judges, so this is where things get a little bit interesting, is the judges actually made a wrong call here. They went ahead and said, okay, well, they just randomly put a card back, and that's actually not the case. If the player does get that extra information, you are supposed to go ahead and look at their hand and pick the card that gets put back. And then the kind of crazy thing that made me go, oh wow, this is absurd, is so the first play of the game apparently was the Kaisa player activated a singularity, right? And later in the game, so this was actually right after the extra draw, the Yi player was like, hey, there's no singularity in your discard, and you have a singularity in your hand. So apparently the Kaisa player had just added the singularity back from their discard. And they're like, oh, that was an accident. How does that happen as an accident, right? That seems like a pretty ridiculous accident. And the judges said, well, we're not actually here. Let me find the actual quote in here. But essentially, the judges said that they were not supposed to actually give just straight up game losses. they're only supposed to go through warnings, which does make a little bit of sense. But I think there should be some form of some sort of, what's the word for it? Like, if I see something as a judge that is very obviously to me that the player is doing something to try and take advantage of a game state, or I feel like as a judge, I should be allowed to just say that's a game loss, get out of here, right? Like that. But in this case, it sounds like the judges were not allowed to be actually doing that. Yeah, so here, right here, as much as they believe that a game loss is appropriate here, it's not allowed by policy. And it was because at the first regional they did not want to be giving these out. So what do you think about that? That seems a bit ridiculous to me, right?
Yeah, like I understand at the local level you want to be generous and like kind to everyone, even at like the skirmish level, which is still like in like pretty local. But once you get to like levels of competition, which is what the regional qualifier is, like,
Mm-hmm.
are you going to be this generous once you get to world, like not worlds, but like the national, like the continentals or the nationals, like how you want to define it? Like, I think you need to set a precedent at competitive events, especially when there's a lot of money on the line. Like, you are incentivizing these best ofs, and you are aware that they are going to drive competition in that way. Like, even though people that are showing up with their pet decks or have the opportunity to make a lot of money or like win prizing. So I think you actually have to like set a precedent that like this is a competitive event. We will be as kind as we can to you in casual, even side events, because like there's less on the line than there is in the main event. But like once you are in the regional qualifier, like there is a standard of play that needs to be upheld, and like not being able to enforce punishment. Like this guy, his opponent could not have been cheating. He could actively been trying to cheat. It doesn't matter. Like you just can't punish. Like you need to be able to punish both. Like
Mm-hmm.
it is. There's not really too much more to say. Like if there is cheating taking place, like where is this line for like what is a disqualification or a game loss? It sounds like there isn't one, which is just completely unacceptable. Like if I walk up to a judge and say, "Hey, I'm going to stack my deck to my opponent every round and just try and cheat," like there should be some kind of like there should be a punishment for that. But based off
Yeah.
of what this is saying is there's like yeah, there's just no punishment for that. Like we're just gonna like keep an eye on it and like slap on the wrist or whatever. But like no, like if even if it obviously not intentional, you want to be generous. But like if it's like oh like I didn't pay a power or whatever, like we'll talk about some of those situations later. But when like this is as consistent as it is, you can be nervous like that. I totally get it. Like I get nervous and anxious all the time, but like you can't just like cheat to that level that consistently. Like at a certain point, like there is a threshold to where you have to be punished for your actions, and even if it is you're new to the game, whatever. Like there's so many excuses. If you're in a competitive event, you have to like follow the rules, and there has to be punishment for those rules. Or people that are actually malicious can get away with everything. Like obviously, there are people that are going to be caught in the crossfire that are not malicious. Doesn't matter. There's a standard of play. You have to understand the rules if you're playing a competitive event, and you have to just uphold those. And it sounds like there is not enough punishment for like potential cheaters based off of this. Like, obviously, this guy, it sounds like it wasn't being intentional, but if it is, like, he needs to be punished. Like, you cannot just do those things continuously and not have repercussions. So, this is something that, like, cannot continue if your goal is to have a competitive game. Like, if this is going to be a casual game, God bless, but, like, don't hold 1,500-person tournaments with tens of thousands of dollars in, like, secondary market pricing. Like, this is just very easy ways for issues to arise.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere, and I don't know if it's in this post or not. I'm not gonna go through it all because it is a fairly long one. But I did see somewhere that the judge staff was told to kind of go easier on players, as this was like the first event in Europe or something, similar to how things in Vegas happen, or sorry, Houston, which I personally don't buy. I understand why they would say that,
Wouldn't
but
surprise me.
it's like there is a level of competitiveness you should expect at these high level events, and if you cannot meet it, I mean, it sucks, and it would feel awful to get a game loss at your first tournament. But you need to uphold competitive integrity. Players need to know what they're doing, and it's not fair. It's not only not fair to you, but it's not fair to your opponent if you're not allowed. If essentially cheating is allowed. Because what it sounds
Yeah.
like right now, if the only possible punishments are DQs and then warnings, which compounded warnings will lead to a game loss. But if you are not allowed to immediately get that game loss, it sounds to me like this is just going to incentivize cheaters to like push the limits. Like they're going to cheat and they're going to cheat and they're going to cheat until they get caught. And then when they get caught, they just get a warning. They get a warning. And then they just say, okay, maybe I'm just not cheating anymore. And I got 5 rounds of just free wins because I was cheating. And there's no punishment because it's just a warning. And we talked about this, I think, after the Houston regional or something about that, because there was something similar where people were just like allowed to do things and then given warnings, like which actually kind of leads us right into the next thing. And this was something that you wanted to talk about is, and I wish I had a visual here, but what people were doing during the event, and this happened pretty much every game on stream, is when they were paying power costs, they were just flipping their runes upside down to indicate a rune had gone back to the rune deck. And this did lead to a fair amount of kind of misunderstanding of game state. It was a little bit confusing a lot of times. And notoriously, I say notoriously, it's only been 2 days, more visibly, there was a Fiora player on stream, and I don't know if this was malicious. I don't know if it was intentional. Maybe it was purely an accident. They paid a riposte, so doing this thing where they're flipping runes upside down and whatever. They ended up paying one less power, so only paid 1 power for a riposte, and then it did lead them to winning a game that they were not going to win. And Aaron has linked me a picture. So this is what we're talking about, where players were flipping.
This is in the finals. This is Alan ZQ doing it in the Edreal deck. So this was something I brought up pretty early on after watching it. So from my understanding, like I've been playing on TCGA, this is like the common occurrence now for how people represent floating mana, which makes sense in theory, right? Like you would see this and you're like, okay, I still have 7 mana. The way that the Chinese do it on their streams is they just like have a dice that they put in there, like this is like a part of the mana pool. Obviously, it is harder to kind of recognize that as like a visual. You're like, what is this dice doing here? Okay, maybe move it, whatever. So like I understand why they do it this way. So like you have the visual, whatever. The issue is, especially when it gets to like called shots, like so the specific sequence I remember was the Roar player. I don't remember what game. It may have been the finals, but he goes called shot, so float 2, and then off of that hits a sabotage. Sabotage then pays the orange. So he goes, so it's still 2 floating purple, pays an orange, floats, and then like puts that orange on the bottom. Game mechanically, those 2 purple should be on the bottom of the rune deck prior to the orange. Generally that probably doesn't matter, but like let's say you're short orange for a punch first, and now like you have more like orange flowing to the top of your rune deck. So like this is something that I'm gonna ask staff about. I don't want to be a dickhead, but like this is truly something that like could actually affect how the games are played out, and it matters. So like this is like just another example of like how procedures, like this is where like cutting corners like in theory sounds nice, but like it actually can affect like long games. And like if the long game is decided, like one of these games was decided because if I remember correctly, the Aurora player like missed a purple rune and couldn't play a challenge, or not a, like a call shot or something off of it, or a rebuke or something. Like the order of rune deck does actually matters, and like oh, like you're playing a game and like you need to play a purple, no, like you can't because you only have blues or whatever. Like the order of rune deck does actually affect the outcomes of some games, so making sure it is done correctly I think is important. And this is just another example of how like I think Riot needs to be very much stricter than they are currently on procedures. Like when people are cheating, when this type of stuff, like there are ways to get around it. You put a dice, like you can literally create a floating rune like card in set 3 or whatever. Like you can print that out. It's not that difficult. But this is something that I think they were pretty lax on, and it makes sense visually. But if you are not on top of it, I think it can actually lead to pretty consistent problems, or not consistent, but like it can lead to issues if you're not on top of it. Which it seems like they aren't on principle for whatever like accessibility. But when you get to competitive, accessibility is unfortunately lower on the totem pole in terms of priorities than like competitive integrity.
And I think this is one of the other issues that you didn't really mention there that I found as someone who was casting these on Rune. So I casted these on Runes and Rift. So set a restream, not the official stream, as cool as that would be. But is once these cards get flipped upside down, you can't see what color rune it is anymore. And you just kind of, unless your opponent is showing, and most of the players did not do this, mind you, is unless your opponent is showing the card that they're recycling, that these floating powers would just essentially be rainbow colored. Like For
Yeah.
instance, a scenario, and this didn't happen on stream, but just illustrating a scenario is, let's say I am playing Yi, and I need to I want to equip my GA to a Yi, my Yi. So I'm now floating a green rune. So I flip my green rune upside down, right? Or and then I need to pay the power later for like a like an orange, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I've essentially the upside down rune looks like a rainbow color, and it could end up meaning that you're recycling stuff that you're not supposed to be able to, like for instance putting cards back for the wrong colors. And I just don't like how this is very illegible as a viewer. I cannot see what color rune this is. It makes things hard to tell. So I don't like this at all, and I agree with you. I wish they would like just print like these are floating runes, or maybe have some sort of indicator at least for the stream matches, because I'm sure it's easier when you're just sitting across from the table with your opponent. Like you could say, okay, I'm floating to orange, and I can hear that and I can remember that because it's just like 30 seconds. But as a viewer, I don't hear the people saying this, and I just see like runes being flipped over and then upside down runes being going back to the rune deck and stuff. It's just confusing for me. But
Yeah, in general, like obviously, like this game has a fair amount of actions. Like it's not a traditional TCG where like you have the
mhm,
battlefields, which is a little bit different. You have like a rune deck. Like there's a lot of different things going on. In general, like I guess I said, cutting corners I think sounds nice. When this type of stuff, especially early on, like this is the type of stuff where early on you need to be strict with people. That way, like they understand what to do
mhm,
correctly. And then later down the line, whatever, like we saw Alan, who actually fixed himself. Like I want to give him the most props. Like he did this, I think, a couple different times, put the wrong rune back in the order, and then it caught himself. It's like, oh, like this should actually be like secondary because I floated this one first.
yeah,
So he was on top of it. Um, so yeah, I want to give him props, but like that's not like the norm. And there was a time where like his opponent was like mind splitting his hand off of Aurora. He's like untapping everything and just like skipping all the steps. So like I get it. Like he's obviously comfortable enough doing that. Whenever you are very good at card games, like you can just kind of like go on autopilot in those situations. But like this is the type of stuff that like you need to be a hard ass on procedurally because you are in the beginning of the game. You need to like make sure everyone knows what they're doing, etc. But like right now, it seems like they're lax in the wrong areas and strict in the other, or like not strict enough in others. I don't know. It's just
yeah,
something where I would prefer more strictness early on. That way, you can like potentially ease up down the line once you get an understanding. But when things are lax, and obviously if you're trying to be inclusive, but like competitive events is unfortunately not the position to give generous understandings of things. Like Yu-Gi-Oh has that reputation of without like clear and whatever proof, like things are gonna they're gonna let things slide, and there's like a lot of potential for those rules to be taken advantage of. So I would like to see the inverse happen here, where they're stricter in those situations and potentially like have a case by case discrepancy basis. But right now, I think it's
yeah.
not in the correct position.
Yep. Yep. So definitely on the same page there, and hopefully they do fix the stream setup a little bit as well, as it was very visually pretty. It was way too cramped for the players. It
Yeah.
looked really rough to play on. There was no space for anything. I mean, the bases, especially in the miracle decks, would just get like everything is stacked on top of each other, so you couldn't see anything because there's just 3 seals, maybe 2 Ezreals, multiple Rasas. Impossible to see things going on. So ideally, they zoom the field out a little bit more. So again, easier
Yeah,
to
it's like a little
view.
bit bigger mat, I think would
Um,
do wonders.
but overall, it was a good experience. So on
Yeah,
to our
it was a good stream.
mhm,
I liked it.
nice. So okay,
Have
so
fun most of it.
we're gonna move on to our next section here, and right before, so a nice break before we actually get into deck lists and predictions. We are going to move on to guess the flavor text, and as a refresher, at the last during the last podcast, Aaron actually did score our first points, so I am down 0 points to 2. Aaron will be asking me a flavor text today. And the live stream did steal our bit, unfortunately, or maybe they did get it from the same source. So they were doing some flavor text guessing as well. So got exposed to some more flavor text. Maybe Aaron will pull a repeat and I will be able to remember
We'll see
it.
if you were paying attention.
But last week it was the yellow Darius, and Aaron was able to guess it after 2 lifelines. So as a reminder, you start with 4 points. Each life point line you do lose a point. The lifelines are what type of card it is, what color the card is, and then what the cost of the card is. And you can either ask for the energy cost or the power cost. So, Aaron, do you have a card for me?
Sure. Yeah, I've found one.
Okay.
It is topical, so hopefully you will be able to get it. The flavor text on this is just lucky, I guess.
Oh my gosh, I read this one yesterday. I don't remember it. Oh no. I
Hopefully
remember.
the lifelines will get you there, but this one is I mean, if I gave you like Ezreal's punchline, you'd get it. So this is,
Yeah.
I think, as close as I can get.
Okay, just lucky, I guess. All right, so who is lucky? Who is lucky? I'm thinking. So my immediate thought is Honest Broker, because he is like a little gambler on the thing. But let's go over champions. So there's Ezreal. This is not Ezreal. This Aurelia, not Aurelia, not Draven. Draven is not a lucky guy. He always wins because he deserves it. Not Darius. Can you give me the color of the card?
This is purple.
It's purple. Okay. Well, I was wrong. It's not Honest Broker. Oh my gosh. All right. So is it Fizz? It's not Fizz. Fizz is not a lucky dude. Not Rasa. Not Traveling Merchant. Give me the cost of the card in energy.
So you're using both?
No, the energy cost.
Energy cost? Okay, so that's
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. It's 1. Oh, okay. I am going to guess. I'm going to make a guess for 2 points here. I'm going to guess that it's stack deck.
You'd be correct.
Yes, let's go. All right, that makes it 2-2. So, I was able to get
one. One is awful because it can't be a unit, so that's probably a grief in hindsight. But.
Yeah, I mean, that was, it's pretty topical for sure, because I don't know if Aaron follows me on Twitter or not, but I did actually do card alters for Stack Deck literally last night.
Yeah, they did. They look good. Yeah, if you haven't seen Fritz's Twitter, would recommend. He did a lot of stuff for his deck, and like all of his alters look generally very good. So would recommend checking it out.
Yeah, hopefully I don't get the judges called on me again. That has happened 2 regionals in a row, or 2 events in a row. But they have been very kind every time it's happened, and I've actually had judges take pictures with my cards a few times, which has been very funny.
Oh, sick.
Yeah, for sure. But so that is the flavor text portion of the podcast, and so now the score is tied up at 2-2. We'll have to see if I can, or if Aaron can take the lead next time. So now we're going to go over to our predictions for Bologna. So as a reminder, the predictions that we made is we were predicting the highest non-Draven, and then also a secondary prediction of what placing they would get, and then the number of Dravens in top 8, and then the most sided card. And so Aaron thought that the highest non-Draven was going to be Aurelia, and then at second place, I thought that the highest Draven was going to be Ezreal, or so highest non-Draven was going to be Ezreal at third place. Let me pull up the standings, but I think it should be very clear for everyone that the highest non-Draven was Ezreal. So I did get this one. Though I did not get the placing right. I was not that much of a believer, but still pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
Then the next one was Dravens in top 8, and we were both very wrong here. Unfortunately, only 3 Dravens in top 8. Aaron was closer. Aaron guessed 5. I guessed 6. Only 3, and none in top 4. So, and then the most sided card, Aaron predicted Thermal Beam. I predicted Thundersong, and we were both wrong. The most sided card was actually, there are 2 of them, both at 4 copies each. It was Mind Splitter. The Draven decks were all siding 1 to do Mind Splitters. I think it was 1-2-1, and then Hard Bargain, and it was 4 decks were playing a single Hard Bargain in the side, so no multiples even. I want to say, yeah, for sure. I want to say it was like Aurelia, and then all 3 of the Dravens or something like that.
Makes sense.
Yep. So then let's actually just dive into these lists now, and then we can do some predictions for Vegas after this. So um, the
Sounds good.
first list is the Ezreal list. So this is Alan's list, and I thought this list was super cool. Uh, like we mentioned earlier in the podcast, this is pretty non-standard. I say non-standard. We only have the Chinese regionals as like a reference until now. They were more on the pit crew strategy, but here we do have a more control deck, and it's playing like the Ravenbloom student, which was totally absent from those Chinese events. We saw the Vex, which was very cool card. Um, it saw quite a lot of use on stream, right? He was able to play, I think, 2 rebukes for like half the cost with this card.
Yeah. Yeah, that was like effectively the game plan of his deck was you attack with Vex, and then in that combat, if people didn't like instantly fight or flight it, or even if they did, like you had focus, so you were able to generally like I saw him rebuking like the other battlefields. Like, okay, I'm gonna like whatever rebuke a guy on the Aurora deck, or just like a Darius or a Forerunner on the other battlefield, and then just like force his way into winning that combat with whatever freezing touch or smoke screens, like arcane shifts. Like he just had so many different options to do it, and like the Vex between the Vex and the not the Accelerate, sorry, the Ezreal, like he was just minimizing the cost of all of his, and like you see cards like Morbid Return, like why is that card in action? Who knows? But like that's just something else that he was able to pay for cheaper than he was. Like there's only like 1 or 2 non-actions in his deck, and it's like Singularity and maybe just Singularity. Like everything else has the action keyword, so he's just able to
Yeah.
play everything for cheaper, which was I think just very well done by him. Like I said, like he played as well as you could have. The ratios, like I said, like that would be like not even a critique, but like the only way for this deck, I think, to struggle is like you just see too many one ofs. You don't get off the ground in terms of seals, and you're paying a lot of power early. Um, Maybe you just like draw too many fizz, not enough spells. Like there's ways for this deck to I think maybe be a little bit clunky, but overall, like if you're just playing at peak and seeing, I'd say like average hands, even like you're gonna be able to see all the cards you need. Like you're gonna have Mind Splitter in the good matchups. You're gonna have Watcher plus Bellows in the good matchups. Like you see enough of your cards through the purple engine that and like fizzes and whatever like to repeat everything. Like you're gonna get to see the key pieces and everything any matchup you need.
Yeah, and people talk about how silly the Ezreal card in that it has like a good on play ability and it cheats costs with the repeat. I mean, Vex was filling a similar purpose here, and I
Yeah.
believe it was you who said it. Someone said that in one of his he said somewhere that his way he was beating like the tall decks with this deck is he would shove up the Ravenbloom and then just make it infinite might with spells. And something that enables that is the Vex card because it makes all your
Yeah.
actions very cheap. So this card is filling like multiple purposes. It helps into the Draven decks where they play some of these combat tricks and these very annoying like rebukes and fight or flights and stuff. But then it's also being like a multi-purpose card like we saw in the finals actually versus the Aurora deck, where now it's making like the rebukes cheap, and he's able to make these really big turns by cheating a ton of mana. So
Hmm.
I liked this card a lot. It was very good in the games that I saw. So
Yeah.
um,
That and then he's only playing like the 2 drop being the student, which helps him get taller on the board.
mhm.
And then like his top end is like 1 Mind Splitter, 1 Watcher. Oh, and the one thing that I did want to bring up for people that may not like this deck is kind of immune to Mind Splitter. Not like guaranteed, but like between Fizz, Morbid Return, um, you can kind of like just always have access to whatever you need. Like if he snipes Fizz, but you have access to Morbid Return, okay, you can add back Fizz, you can do it again, you can do whatever. Okay, I lost my 1 Splitter, I lost my 1 Watcher, okay, you can Morbid Return it back. So you always kind of have access to everything. So like these one of spells, like you see Smoke Screen, you see Morbid Return, you see Frigid Touch, like he has even Retreat, like you have access to all those different cards at any point in the game. And something like Arcane Shift, like okay, I discard that off of Ezreal. Okay, now I get Arcane Shift, and now it's back in deck. I have access to it again. So he built this like he talked about. I've watched those YouTube videos. He spent infinite time playing this deck, and you can see why just like everything made sense. It was cohesive, and he played it to a very high level. So I'm looking forward to see him perform again in Vegas. Like I think he's gonna be best of Ezreal again. It would surprise me if that was the case. Honestly,
Yeah, and
that was
I
wild.
want to highlight this card in particular. I personally, of the games I casted, this card was just absurd. And for
Yeah.
anybody that doesn't know, this was not really seen too much in the Chinese decks as far as I'm aware, but it is Pickpocket. It's just a 3-drop, so no power cost. And when you play me, you can kill a gear with energy cost no more than one, and then you get a gear token. And this card was insane in the Ezreal mirror of
Yeah.
the top 8 Ezreal mirror. For anybody who did not watch, Alan played against the other Ezreal in the first round of 8, which is a bit unfortunate, but it does happen. And there must have been, I think, across the 3 games, they probably killed like it was at least like 12 seals, because every single game a seals would come down and then a pickpocket would be dropped. It's such a good trade because you kill the seals, which is permanently gone. The only way to get those back is recycling your entire deck. So you kill the seals, you get your own gold token. So very big swing in resources there. And then both of them were just looping their pickpockets over and over with like the arcane shifts, with the retreats. I believe the other Ezreal was playing Gust, so he was like gusting his own pickpocket and just getting an insane amount of value. So I like, if I want to highlight any card, I think this card was just really a really smart call.
Yeah, it's so in. I'll give One Piece as an example. Like
Yeah.
it took like 4 or 5 sets for that game to actually get like good side deck cards. So that game is played in a best of one. But like, let's say you wanted to counter for like a bad matchup. Like, there was a card that like shovels your opponent's hand back in and they draw 5 or whatever. Like that card didn't come out till set 4. So like you for a very long time didn't really have like cards that check hand. But in this set, very quickly you see gear removal that's flexible in the form of Rocket Barrage. You see Pickpocket, which checks seals. You see cards like Mind Splitter to like interact with hand, invert timelines, like Factory Recall. Like, there's so many different cards in the game now that are like this game has a sideboard, so you can side these cards. But also just in general, there's so many different options that like if you have a bad matchups or like you have cards you need to take out, like you have really specific cards that check it. So this is why I like best of 3. Like you get to take advantage of all these cards. Like if you theoretically wanted to main pickpocket, okay, like in the matchups that don't have those cards, we'll say like Kaisa, like your maining pickpocket, you play against Kaisa, okay, whatever, take out 3 pickpocket, throw in 3 of whatever. So like I think that ability is really nice, and we'll see if we see more pickpocket as a result in the mains or even in the sides, because you said like you have side deck space and you can just really target down that matchup. Like the miracle decks, like if you don't have seals, you're paying a lot of power very quickly, so that's a big punish for them.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, this deck was really cool. I would expect to see a lot of similar decks, maybe even net decks to Vegas, but this is not going to be an easy deck for these people to pilot. I would be surprised if many players besides Allen are able to succeed at the same level that he does. Obviously, top players can learn decks, but he very clearly had a plan for every matchup that he knew the moment he was going in. And it was, I mean, it was great. I mean, like even this like one of Factory Recall, at a glance you're like, what on earth is this for? And then we saw him just use it over and over in the finals against Aurora. Like, so yep, very very cool deck. Good to see it do well. Here was the Aurora deck that did end up getting second place, and I mean it is just kind of an Aurora deck. I would say the most interesting things are, one is the unit counts have changed quite a bit here. Instead of playing upwards of like 8-9 units, this Last Rites card has enabled Aurora to cut back on their units a lot, because now you can recycle them by attaching this card, and then you can actually play them from your discard. So being able to just almost guarantee the Mind Splitter hit off of the first Aurora, or maybe even the second Aurora, because you are playing 2 Volibear, but that really big. We saw in some of the matches the Mind Splitters were just ripping the entire hands, especially combined with the Last Rites. Any comments? I mean, it looks just like an Aurora list to me, though.
It looks like an Aurora deck.
Yeah.
I like the invert timelines. Like that's a good check to like the miracle decks. It also
Mhm.
gets you deeper into your deck. So I think it's like a nice addition. Sabotage I think is very good. Punch first. I guess it makes sense. Like sometimes late game, like they stack like a miracle battlefield, and you need to be able to try and break through it. So overall, it just seems
Yep.
like a pretty normal deck. I think this deck probably does struggle into the miracle decks. I obviously you have bullet time, so it's probably like the check to it. But outside of that bullet time, I think you can maybe struggle breaking a lot of those battlefields. But yeah, otherwise, very good deck, challenge good card, sabotage good card. Like Orange has like some really strong tools in it to perform well, and Mind Splitter just one of the best top ends in the game right now. So it doesn't surprise me to see a deck that like just runs a little bit above average to get a deep run.
How much do you think the run Aurora had was because the deck is still good versus people undersiding for gear? Because if you noticed in the Ezreal list, for instance, all you
Yeah.
had was the single bounce, and I'm sure we'll notice because I know Marcus was playing no gear hate.
Yeah.
Um, how much do you think it is that versus just being a good call?
It-
Period.
Definitely a part of it. Like there, there's also like less sabotage, like I mentioned, so or not less, but like the top decks outside of like Misfortune and Sivir don't have sabotage. Mind Splitter is a very popular card though, so that's something that if you don't see that ramp, like that turn for Aurora is way less likely to come down, especially post side when you're playing against Draven. Like we saw, like Mind Splitter was the most sided card, and there's usually a copy or two in the main as well. So it's less likely if you don't see that ramp to actually resolve the Aurora. So that's something to definitely be mindful of. I personally have been a gear proponent, especially in like a deck like Kaisa. Like I think Azir is a bad matchup. I think Aurora is still a bad matchup. Like I think you do really need the thermal beams. But yeah, like it does seem to be kind of a trend that like there aren't too many of those gear decks in the format, but like Draven probably has enough tools between like Bryn here and Rebuke and whatever. But I would say deck like Kaisa, like there's probably some other decks out there that really need to have like the Rocket Barrage or the Thermal Beams in their list to guarantee that you don't get those auto losses.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, anyways, that was the second place MF deck, and on to third place, we did have an Aurelia. Let's see. I've not actually looked at this one, but yeah,
The three
double.
boots was the card I heard was the most interesting from
Mm,
outsider perspective, which I kind of get it, but like every time Aurelia is just dancing across both battlefields, I think you're really cooking. So that's something that makes sense to me that maybe people that have been cooking up a lot like maybe overlook or just like, oh, I play Siren for whatever, but like Boots just makes a lot of sense. Like that's a card that I think you really need to see in that deck. There's only 3 2 drops, all the deckhands as well, so maybe a little admirable. I've seen Tide Turners a fair bit. I'm trying to remember. I don't think I've seen Merchant too much. Draven's I think pretty common. Ride the Wind is a card that I'm becoming higher and higher on right now. Even in the Draven deck, like if I was playing Draven, I'd probably have some number of Ride the Winds, probably 2+. Just because like you have that Forerunner that gets pushed back by Fight or Flight. Okay, like you think the combat's over, nope, I'm shoving it back in. Like I think that Ride the Wind has a lot of potential right now and is maybe a little overlooked. And also you have those cards like Treasure Hunter and Kaisa where you go and conquer. Okay, you ride the wind, you get both, and now you get off the battlefield and Draven gets no value. So I think that card is definitely a little bit underappreciated right now. It's a card that I would definitely be looking to take advantage of if I was playing Draven. And then yeah, the side you see Adaptatron, you see just duplicates of everything. Flash is a card that I like in this deck. You get to play around Draven combats additionally, so there's a lot
mm,
of strong cards in here. Yeah, I don't think anything crazy. Celicorn's a card I've heard discussed as like a side deck card maybe, which I think is kind of nuts. These control decks, like you see Ezreal, you see Aurora, like you really need to win those game ones because let's say you play a 25, 30-minute game one, you may finish game two, you may not between siding and playing out the full game. So I think winning game one in Riftbound is super important just due to how the time rules are now that you want to prioritize that. And if you lose a 25-minute game one because you didn't main deck Silicorn, are going to finish 2 games in 35 minutes to catch up for it. I realize not the fastest deck, seems like a little bit of a sketchy proposition, so not something I would be leaning into personally. I think main decking the Silicorn is, I think, a pretty solid idea personally.
yeah, I like the list a lot. A lot of 3 ofs, a lot of 2 ofs, not too much in the random 1 ofs. I mean, looks pretty consistent. I would play a Aurelia
Yeah.
deck like this. I would definitely play an Aurelia deck like this. So, yeah, looking good. Now on to the fourth place, and so this player was featured on stream, I think, a couple times. I know I did cast one of them, but it was a Victor making top 4. Unfortunately, losing to Aurora, which was a bit unfortunate, considering you would expect this to be a winning matchup. But looking not really like the Chinese lists at all. Again, kind of on the
Not at
trend
all.
of being different. This is more of a unit. I guess it's like a nice mix back to like the 2020 split almost, where you have
Yeah.
20 units, 20 removal spells. Looks like it was maining the salvage. Time Warp and Yellow Victor I thought was interesting. Pickpocket in the main deck, which, I mean, again, looked good on
Seems
stream.
like a really
So,
good call in hindsight, right?
the Call of the Weeks, of course, Bell's Breath Watcher used to great. Bell's Breath Watcher used to great success
Yeah.
again on stream, and then you do have the Decree card as well to pair with the Bellows. So not too surprised to see 3. And I mean, this is a card I had not seen really.
Summons a guy from trash when it dies. Like I think
Yeah,
3 energy, 1 power, or something like
yeah.
that, or like 3 cost or lower, something like that. So it recycles
Mm-hmm.
card sharp, it recycles faithful manufacturer. Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of value in that card. It's something I considered early on the deck. I moved it off of it once I started playing control. So it's interesting to see that. I guess it's there for probably like Kaisa, if I had to guess. We're like, okay, it's effectively a forerunner for the yellow or color as long as you have like a 2 dropping trash. So I think that's nice. And yeah, his deck seems well thought out. Like he has easy side ins for like the pickpockets, get more card sharps, and more faithful manufacturer. So looks like a well built deck. I'm kind of surprised to see it perform as well as it did, but if he had a solid run where he plays against a lot of seal decks and he's maining pickpocket, like that alone can just set them too far behind for him to just like get a decent point lead, and then at some point later on in the game, like he's just like, all right, whiteboard, like with Bellows plus Watcher slash Decree. So it seemed to work out well for him. I think this is a little bit of an overperformance for the Victor archetype, but like it doesn't surprise me the deck actually performed well. Like it has some really strong tools in it between the blue and yellow synergy.
Yeah, and I will say that this is actually like better than I thought because it hits one or less. It also is hitting a lot of the equip archetypes because they're playing these one cost equipments. Like Azir plays, I think 6 one cost equipments. Like Jax, all of the orange deck equip decks are playing like Warmogs at the very least. So you can just randomly hit a lot of stuff, which is cool. Um, so that was the Victor deck, and now we're on to our Dravens. There was a few of them here, and so this, I believe, was Prismat, who was playing a Miracle-style Draven. Did end up getting top 8. All the Dravens did lose in the first round of Top Cut, opting to play the Nocturnes, which we had seen. So it looks, I don't remember the exact list, but this looks pretty similar to the Runes and Rift list that he got, I want to say, 3rd place with the week before. It's a very streamlined list, which is not something I usually say about these Miracle decks because you play a lot of one-ofs because they're accessible with Fizz and all this digging. But like 3 Nocturnes, 3 Rasa, 3 Battering Ram, 3 Seal, 3 Scrap Heap, 3 Scald, like a lot of 3-ofs, and then you have like the lineup of combo pieces here at the end, like the Rebuke for the Fizz, or not for the Fizz, the Rebuke that you can replay. Yep. The Piercing Light, which I believe he was playing 2 of. Okay, yeah, there's one in the sideboard in the Runes and Rift tournament. This is very good into the Draven deck. And then also the Miracle Mirror as with the Ezreals, because he's playing 3 of the Ezreals. You can just play this in board wipe. Very powerful card. The couple Fireflies, Bushwhack, which, I mean, this card was slept on a little bit. I mean, it's very good in the Miracle deck. Being able to, you can put out an absurd number of units when he's playing the triple Nocturne, triple Rasa, triple Battering Ram. There must have been some absurd turns. Like,
Yeah, I was at a bachelor party this weekend, and one of them was playing a Miracle deck when we had some downtime, and his list was, I think, a little bit different from this, but like some of the turns that I watched him pop out were like, I was literally like, I turn around, look at the stream for a little bit, I look back, and there's just like 28 might that wasn't there 30 seconds ago. I'm like, what the hell just happened? So yeah, this deck has a lot of power. It does have like some clunk potential, especially when you have the Nocturnes. Like there's some variance in the beat of that. You play Candlelit post side, you play Zons, like so. There's battlefield dependent that you can, or like battlefield availability to like help fix some of those issues. But yeah, I mean the deck's gonna pop off when it pops off, and there's not much you can do about it. Very strong pick. Yeah, like it's a deck that like when it sees its top end, like I'm not sure. Like everyone's like, oh, like ceiling, like is the ceiling worth the like inconsistency? And this is the deck that I think is definitely has that threshold where like okay, like if it pops off and does that every game, like I don't know what deck can beat it like at all. Even the Ezreal deck, like I think would eventually like just get killed quickly enough.
yeah, and is opting to main 1 piece of gear removal here. We have the Thermal Beam in the side. So again, kind of following that trend of not much gear removal. Maybe again why the Aurora deck did have some success. So,
Yeah.
then we had Randy on the Draven deck. I believe this was a more...
His list was very strange.
Oh, what on earth? Okay, so opting to play the Vi, the Treasure Hunter. So generally these Miracle decks are maxing out on the Merchant because it builds up your discard. You can discard the one-ofs that you're playing off of the Fizz. You can set up these really big turns, but he's playing a lot of 2-drops. So what? 2, 3...
9 if you count Vi, yeah.
Yeah. 1 Fizz?
He only plays 2 seals. He plays 2 scrap heaps. So he actually posted a Yu-Gi-Oh style deck profile on his channel. I'm gonna go look at that a little bit later because I'm very curious to hear some of his thought process on some of this. But this list looks very abnormal.
Yeah.
I think there's some things in here that I do like. Like I don't know if I would play 1 Rasa, but that is definitely a card that contributes to like your bricks in this deck because you are gonna like you can't play it until like the late game, right? So like when you see it early, you generally pitch it. If you see it off call, try to put it on the bottom. So if you're looking to have like high quality cards in your deck, that's definitely one that isn't one of those. It's like a back end like finisher. So that's something to be mindful of. But yeah, like I don't understand manning 2 and siding the 3rd seals. Like 2 scrap heap seems. I guess it was like a siding pattern thing where like, oh, I only have 2 side deck slots post side, but that just seems like a card that's just too valuable between, like, obviously only playing 2 Merchant, but, like, I feel like a person I'd be maxing out on the Merchant and the Scrap Heap, like, it's just too much value over the course of a long tournament, so gonna go watch this video a bit later, try to understand his thought process, but, I mean, it's a Miracle Draven deck, like, he's a very good player, it doesn't surprise me to see him perform well, even if it's, like, a little bit different. I think there's some good in this list, there's some things that I would probably do a little bit differently, but when you're as good at the game as him, it doesn't surprise me to see him perform well.
And no bushwhack in here either. So just relying on the
Yes,
ride to win.
which is, I mean, I like the right to win. I think Bushwhack is just like so
Yeah.
good. Like that card contributes to like some really nuts turns, especially if you're playing Spinning Axe, which I don't think he was. But in Prismat's list, you are like you get to equip with Axe and just like jam like +3 attack on every turn. It's very very strong.
So I had not seen this card played before. So the beast below, when you play me, return another friendly unit and enemy unit to the user's hands. What do you think what this card is for? Particularly, any idea?
So I assume like in a Aurelia deck that doesn't play a lot of cheap units, or you go like here's like kill backline and then do that. If I had to guess, but
Yeah.
that's the only thing I can think of. Like it sounds like Downwell may just like do that job better. I'm gonna hear about it a little bit later and I'll
Yeah.
get some thoughts on Twitter or like if you see me in person we can talk about it. But like yeah, that just again he's very good. I'm gonna trust his testing, but it's just
Yeah.
not a card that I would put into. So I'm gonna try and understand why he did it.
All right, and then up to Marcus.
This is the most standard Draven deck list you'll ever see.
It is Draven, mid-range Draven, so not the Miracle version. Opting to main a couple Thunder Song. I mean, this card seemed very good in the stream matches he was on. Definitely closed out a couple games on its own. Opting to play the Forerunner in the main as well. That card seemed pretty decent into the matches that we saw, though obviously maybe not as nice once you get to the top cut where all of the decks had Rebuke somewhere in them. But at least through Swiss, feeling pretty good. Playing one Mind Splitter in the main, a couple in the side. We saw them come in the Aurora matchup, probably just more again into those like top end or the control decks. It did hit an Aurora out of a hand, so definitely did its job. Yeah, like you said, I mean, pretty typical Draven deck list. Playing the against the odds. I mean, card is cool.
So that was a card that I made fun of for a long time that I've actually begun to understand that. So I'm not sure if it's good into mid-range Draven. I haven't played too many mid-range Draven mirrors with that card in my deck. But as Miracle has gotten more popular, that card is so good at cracking their boards. Especially like you send in like a cheap guy, like you send in your own fan, a Tide Turner or whatever, and they're gonna like have like one fan or maybe even two fans. Like okay, I'm just gonna like let it resolve, and I'll like fan will just trade with fan. But now you're like okay, now against the odds, and now I kill like multiple fans and like a Draven or something that didn't trigger. So that's like a combat trick, especially if you're like a hard bargain or something to like check the rebukes and stuff. So there's a lot of utility in that card. I think it's really strong. And if you're playing a mid range deck, and I don't really know of any other way to like actually interact with the Draven board because they can get up to like in the 20s and even in like the 30s in terms of might. So that's a card that can actually against the odds like try and like help you crack through some of those boards with like Darius plus whatever Forerunner. Like okay, now I get to against the odds. We're up into the low 20s. Okay, now we can maybe switcheroo something as well. Like there's a lot of it's a really expensive turn, but like if you break the back of the Miracle deck, especially like I was maining against the odds when I was testing a little bit, so like game one, that's like one really important thing. But if you're able to like crack their full send turn where they're trying to hold, like they generally don't have too much follow up, especially if they're not maining last right. So that's something to be mindful of.
Yeah, for sure. If you can get past the one turn where they throw everything on the battlefield, they can do things, but definitely not nearly as much because the Rosses are in the discard, the Rams are in the discard, and you have to find these pieces again, and you have to get a bushwhack again. So definitely not the
Especially if
easiest
they send the Ezreal up and like it gets killed, like they don't have the repeat cost.
Yeah.
Whatever decreased. So they're like obviously they're gonna wait until later on in the game. So it's gonna be harder. They're gonna have more cards, but it gives you a chance when I think the natural mid range deck doesn't have a shot in breaking a Miracle board. So it's nice to see.
So this is the last Ezreal deck that did make the top cut. So this deck lost to to Alan in the first round. And so this one, a little bit different, opting to play 3 Ezreal. I mean, card is very good, as we've seen. Playing 3 Fizz, playing 3 Rasa, playing the Last Rites in the main deck. Playing the Gust, so this is what we did see with the Pickpocket, which looks like it was sided as well. So both players opting for a similar, came to the same conclusion. I don't know if they know each other, if they tested it all together, but at least came to the same conclusion that this is a 3 of in your side deck, the Downwell in the main deck, and triple Arcane Shift. So this is, and we did see Alan doing something like this too. I think he was playing 2 Arcane Shift. In China, this was just like a one of, but obviously the players here are saying, okay, this is absolutely not a one of. I'm playing 2 or even 3 of this card.
I mean, yeah, that card comboed with like Freezing Touch can out some pretty top like tall units like Mind Splitter, like
Mm-hmm.
Arcane Shift plus double Freezing Touch can clear. So the biggest issue with it obviously is that it requires both you to have a unit and then to have a unit on a battlefield. This list looks like it takes a little bit more advantage of it because it plays less units. So like your opponent's gonna have a pretty easy time like getting on boards. Alan's list was like a little bit more aggressive in the way that it presented itself. Like it like played units a little more early. This one looks like it's gonna be a little bit more top end heavy. And not and gonna have like there's gonna be like it's contesting the battlefield less when the other build with the Vexes is gonna be fighting on battlefields more. So I think Arcane Shift. I'm surprised to see no Mind Splitters in this list. Like that's generally like
Mm-hmm.
the main reason that I saw it in these edge rolls. Like okay, I get to Arcane Shift plus Watcher or Arcane Shift plus Mind Splitter. Like it seems like he's only Arcane Shifting like Fizz to replace spells from Grave. So there's definitely utility in that, but I definitely prefer the way Alan built it, and I'm surprised to see no Mind Splitter. Like I said, like that card with Arcane Shift, I think is really oppressive, and especially like, if you're not playing against Kaiser, even if you are, and they don't kill the Mind Splitter beforehand, like okay, I'll rip another card in your hand, and that's where I think the matchup can get pretty scary as the Kaiser. So I'm surprised I don't top end, but the deck is obviously as well positioned. Like it seems like the pickpockets for the Miracle decks and Downwell, I think is also a really interesting thing to beat like Aurora, and maybe it's okay against the Miracle. So we'll kind of see how this deck shapes moving forward. If I had to guess, Alan's list a little bit more streamlined, but I mean the blue purple colors is very strong, and this is a deck that I think in the beginning we may have underrated a little bit. It's probably gonna be pretty close to the A tier with everything else at this point.
There's no bellows in here either, which is interesting because I found some of the more oppressive things that this deck would do is when it would just loop fizzes and bellows, and you could never stick a unit in the back line. At least from the
Yeah.
few games that I've played against this version of the deck. So that's interesting to me too. I wonder how he was kind of closing some of the like setting up these board states where he just can't lose, because just looking at the lineup, there really isn't that much that interacts with the board, right? It's like
Yeah.
Gust, Fight or Flight, Rebuke, Arcane Shift, Wages. And these, like, nothing interacts with the back line. It's all battlefield only. So
Yeah, like I said, this is a list that like I'm kind of surprised to see it perform as well as it does. Like you have Dreaming Tree to like dig
oh
deep in one game,
god.
like so you can see your entire deck. Yeah, the only two blue runes he has in are for the Rocket Barrages in the side deck, if I had to guess. So
Yeah.
yeah, like this is like a pretty much a mono purple deck. Like maybe Downwell just overperformed from in some spots, but yeah, like you said, like not having Bellows, not having access to like that board removal, like that's how Alan won his matchup against this. Was he like this Ezreal player was like setting up backline. He had like whatever 4 or 5 units in back, including
Yep.
Arasa. Alan just goes like, okay, like activate Bellows, okay, Watcher, clear board, okay, fair touch. Your entire backline is gone. Like
Yep.
that was like the scariest part of the deck to me, and this doesn't have access to that. So if I had to play the deck, like I said, I think Alan's list is a little cleaner, but blue
Yep.
purple color pretty hard to go wrong.
Yeah. Also opting to play Aspirants, which is an interesting choice here. I wonder what
I mean, he's
that
playing
was
the
for.
super control deck, so it makes
Yeah.
sense that you don't want to get beat early.
So just gonna check out a couple more lists here of some of the interesting best of legends. We'll just go here and we'll not spend a super long time on these because I imagine some of these aren't going to be the most interesting thing to look at. But did I miss the Sivir? I did miss the Sivir. So I believe the Sivir was just an Aurora deck. Yeah, so if we look at this, it's just an Aurora deck, opting to play more units, playing the Dead Bloom, playing... yeah, this is actually a very streamlined deck. Like, it's like all 2 and 3 ofs.
3 ofs, yeah.
Opting to play a
I
bunch
like
of
it.
1 ofs here.
I also like the utility in
Mhm.
the like the Anivia. Like, let's say you have a bad match against Victor, like this is going to be a card that helps in that matchup. So
Yep.
definitely a lot of utility. The Cannon Barrage post side to clear with fans. So I mean, if you're going to play an Aurora deck, this seems like a pretty solid way to start out.
Yep, I like this one more. I personally like Sivir a little bit more than MF for Aurora just because it makes this card better. It does by itself trigger your leader, so cool little interaction there. Looking at the best of Jinx, this is probably just Miracle. Yeah, so it's just a Miracle list.
Yeah, 1 rocket. That's like the only thing that distinguishes it from a Draven deck is just it
Yep.
plays one of those. That
Yep.
yeah.
So yep,
One
pretty.
switcher as well, just to try and hold. Yeah, plays the minefield. Yeah, just this is just a miracle deck. Cool.
If you didn't see
Yeah.
the leader, you would not be able to tell this was a. Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, then we look at the Jacks. So the Jacks, ooh, a lot of different cards here. Looks like we have a just a single two
lot of
drop.
2-ofs. This is the opposite of
Yeah,
streamlined.
yeah.
Yeah, like
One
2 counter
of.
strike, 1 sabotage, like 2 discipline.
Mm-hmm.
2, like I think some of these cards you can justify it to, like charm probably you don't have to max out on, like 2 to 5 not so fast seems kind of strange. So Stellar Core is a card that I don't understand why it is played in some of these decks. I just don't understand if I'm seeing it incorrectly, but it feels like if you're not putting Stellar Core in a deck with purple, like you're gonna really struggle to actually get off enough cards to justify its inclusion. Um, like you're only get to draw what at most one a turn, right? And you have to like spend cards to keep it alive at battlefield. In Yi, you can maybe justify a little bit more because of defense for 5, but in the Jax deck, obviously you have some amount of like equips, like you play like the 9 good ones, but just seems like a pretty sketchy proposition to like try and be like, all right, I'm just gonna Stellar Core and draw 1 card every turn. It's gonna keep me up. Like, I think I'd prefer to like rely on the battlefields and maybe find another draw engine if there is one.
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised as well, and I'm also surprised that Clockwork Keeper was the 2-drop of choice, because this card has kind of fallen out of play as a green card.
Yeah, Lonely Forward just seems like a better option, right?
Yeah,
It's like the same card but better most of the time.
yeah, and then even then, like if we're playing this deck that is actually holding with units, I feel like Pit Rookie is like a pretty good option there as well, as that is making your units just slightly better, and does have some buff synergy with
Yeah,
like the monastery.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, good for them. They were able to get, I think, top 16 with this. So or no,
Yeah,
top
Runner is a
32.
good card as well. Like that was like when I saw that Israel list that
Hmm.
one, I was like, this Runner card maybe do well. Like I instantly thought like, okay, Jax is like
Hmm.
Jax slash Yi, I think are probably one of like the few matchups for that deck that may struggle it into.
Hmm.
I think Alan said he's like, yeah, like, I'm not scared into any matchup, which I agree with. But like, if I'm gonna be concerned with a card or like some color combination with the Ezreal deck, I think green orange is probably the combo that has like the best like card responses to the way the Ezreal deck plays.
Yep. So looking at the Lucian deck here, this is a lot more streamlined. A lot of, again, 3-ofs. We have the 3 first mates. So opting to play no 2-drops, and instead just 3-of, 2-of, 2-of, 3-of, 3-of, 3-of. So very streamlined. He knew what units he wanted to see, and I mean, triple Rune Runner, not a surprise for me at all. After seeing
He's
what
not fucking
he,
around. He's just
yeah,
jamming the good units and the good gears and just trying to cheese you out with the combo. So,
yep,
I mean, if I'm gonna play Lucian, this is probably gonna be how I'm gonna do it. Just try to get lucky with in terms of some matchups. But
yep,
yeah, like this deck, I think it runs out of gas very quickly. Kai'Sa obviously helps with that, but you're trying to combo your opponent with the 2 really good gears. So
yeah, yep.
he built his deck to do that. Just that.
Yep. So, and now on to the two more. So looking at the best of Annie, looks like it opted to play a pretty similar. Actually, is this? Yeah, I think this is pretty similar to the
Yeah, it's like a
Chinese
set one
Annie.
any deck kind
Yeah,
of. Yeah.
doesn't
Play
really
some
play
fizzes.
many.
You toss in what like is Fizz the only new card? There's Fizz and Rengar. Okay, this is
Um,
that one deck.
yeah, it's
Longsword. Yeah.
not playing
So
Called
yeah, I mean like
Shot.
you side deck some hard bargains.
Mm,
Like yeah, but this is a very comparable set one deck. Like you side Vi for Vide the Wind, which against like someone like Kai'Sa is very good, and
mm-hmm.
probably some other matchups. But
Yep.
yeah, I mean I like the Rengar. I think it's got some neat applications into like Fight or Flight and Rebuke decks. So like it's probably some interesting spots for it. But yeah, it's just like a solid any deck. I don't really understand why it's play like if you're playing it for Metal Card, God bless. But I'm honestly surprised to see this perform even better than like a Miracle version of Annie. Like
Yep.
I think that just would just personally that's like how I would approach any red purple deck that's not like mid range Draven.
Yep.
Like that seems like the best.
Yeah. And Annie's like
way to do it.
leader ability is okay for Miracle as well, because it guarantees you can just
Yeah.
throw all your runes out and then still have and then even her champion units, it acts as like a pseudo
You
fizz.
can get
It's
back
a worse
Bushwhack,
fizz,
you can
but
get back whatever, right?
yeah.
You're not losing anything off of it.
So, right. And then the last one that we're gonna look at was a Master Yi list. Oh my, this is a pile. Okay, so it looks like opting to go triple Rune Runner and the only at 2 Trinity Forced. I mean, triple Rune Runner, not really surprised. Again, I think this is the reason to play orange if you're not playing Aurora, is to say I'm going to put a big camel on the board and say you can't out it. And it does look like some of these decks would have a bit of a tough time outing it. Still opting to play Find Your Center. This is the first Find Your Center we've seen, which is kind of interesting. This card has kind of fallen out of favor from set 1. It is pretty slow, just like a ramp and a draw. Opting to play Desert's Call. When I saw this card, I was like, this is a pretty good Yi card. It acts as a vanilla 2-drop, but you can also repeat it if you need multiple units. Kind of a cool card. And it does work with the Ravenbloom that he's playing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I
I
mean, one ofs, yeah.
I mean, so I was actually, like I said, testing
Hmm.
like the best of Ornn, and
Hmm.
my deck was not Protect the Castle. It was like more mid range. This is actually pretty similar to like the shell of how I had built that deck. So it's kind of nice to see like yeah, like Rune Runner I think is like the defining characteristic of why you would play this deck over, like you said, like any Aurora deck. So that's nice. But like Finder Center and like playing, I think a lot of like the early two drops aren't fantastic. So like you want to like play some C, or like you either want to ramp to like the better cards, or just play gear that is impactful. So I like this. Like I think Violmaz is an underrated battlefield right now against like Draven. Like that's most of their interactions are pushbacks. We'll see if that gets worse now that Ezreal is going to be a top tier contender. But I like Violmaz Lair. Like I think there's a lot of really interesting things in this deck that perform well. So if you're interested in a green orange deck, like I think it's like a pretty interesting place to start out and test with. I
Hmm.
think it's built well.
Yep, for sure. So that does wrap up our looking at deck lists from Bologna, and now we are going to finish up the episode with predictions for Vegas. So, the first question for you, Aaron, is what do you think the least represented legend will be? And
Least represented, Garen was this one. Lee Sin was second worst.
I think
Um,
Leona was up there too.
Leona made no day twos, or no, it was Ornn or whatever. Which is surprising. From my understanding, Leona has like a pretty good Draven matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's what I've heard. I haven't played it much, but that is the word on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Garen's probably the easy guess. I'm gonna go Lee Sin. I think that leader is underwhelming, and there's no reason to play it.
All right. My guess is going to also be Lee Sin. Unfortunately, I am going to copy you. I think that people are going to see the Garen and do the same thing that happened in the Chinese regional, and we're going to see like 30 Garens in the next event, um,
Yeah.
which is going
Which
to
is
be
kind of
very
funny. Like Lee
funny.
Sin's like a pretty popular like actual League of Legends character. I'm surprised it's kind of like underperforming in this way, but who
They made
knows?
him
It's
so
just not a
vanilla.
contest.
He's just so vanilla,
Yeah.
right? Like it's like, oh, tap him, give a buff, and it's not even free. You have to pay for it. So like
Yeah.
compare that to the other leaders, like I don't know, it's silly. And the champion unit's pretty vanilla as well. Like tap him, give a buff. It's the same card. Okay, so the next question will be, and we're going to do another repeat here because I think this is still an interesting one. Is what is the highest non-Drave? Actually, you know what? We're just going to put it as what is going to win the event. What do you think will win the event?
What will win the event? I think Alan on Israel is like a good guess.
Mm-hmm.
What else is there? Aurelia, Draven. Uh, do I think Alan goes back to back? I don't know. It didn't seem like anyone was really even close to beating him. Like he lost like a game or two, but he was so well prepared. I'm curious. Like the thing is, when you put that much prep in and you like have a list, you also understand like how the deck struggles, and he probably has preparations for how to adjust the list based off counters. So,
Mm-hmm.
dude, he top eighted Houston. Like, uh, I don't. I think man, Miracle Draven. Does Miracle Draven to sack it out? Unsurprising. I'm gonna go Miracle Draven.
Okay.
I don't even. I think Miracle Draven's a reasonable guess, but if you just said Ezreal slash Allen, like it's also
Mm-hmm.
like I think probably the most optimal guess.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and guess Kaisa, which, even though Kaisa didn't show up at this one, I still think theoretically it has a good matchup spread. I think that in particular, I think it's going to farm people playing Ezreal, and I think the Ezreal deck does have a line for it, right? Like we saw the Mundo in the side deck. I'm sure Alan played against Kaisa's in the main event, but no one playing the deck is Alan except for Alan, and they don't know
Yeah,
these lines in and out, and at least from my little testing that I did of Kaisa versus Ezreal, the deck, it felt insanely free to the point of where it, like the only loss I had was one of the Kaisa games where you draw like 7 of your 9 units, 7 of your 12 units, and see one removal spell, and then you just lose. Um,
yeah.
so I'm gonna say Kaisa. I think it has a good matchup spread, and I think that there are gonna be a lot of people on Ezreal as like the hype goes up for Control Ezreal. And the last question is, what do you think the highest Aurora placement will be? Now that we saw Aurora actually got second, and will people decide now, okay, we need Gear Hate in, or will it just kind of live freely and see another top 8? What would you guess? And like a little bonus question, will it be MF? Will it be Sivir? Who will it be?
MF, Civ. Sorry, MF top
Sivir
16.
Yi. Okay, so MF top
MF
16.
top 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm guessing Sivir, and I'm gonna say he's gonna make top 8. I think that it is going to go where people are gonna go, okay, other people are gonna be putting in gear hate now that Aurora did well, and I don't have to do it because they're gonna get filtered out, and then it's just gonna do it again. And I think that Aurora is such a high roll deck that if someone is having a day, it doesn't even matter if they have gear hate. Like, they're still gonna win. So that's my guess. I guess we'll have to see. And to wrap up the episode, then, do you have any thoughts about Vegas? Because I know you are going.
I'm still deciding on 2 decks. I'll just say it's between Kai'Sa and Aurelia. I think those are 2 well-positioned decks, especially if the meta at all shifts into like more Ezreal. So I'm gonna hopefully decide on that by later tonight. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Hope to see anyone in Vegas. Say hi. Like, I'm from Yu-Gi-Oh! From Riftbound. It's always nice meeting people that enjoy card games. So yeah, looking forward to it. Yeah, hopefully we do well. Looking forward to playing some Riftbound. It's a fun game.
For sure. So thanks everyone for watching. This was the 4th episode of Seal of Insight, and we will see you guys in a couple weeks, and we'll have to look back at Vegas, and then I don't think that there's then a little bit of a gap between events, I believe. So we'll have some time.
Yeah, I think April's the next one. Yeah.
See how things evolve. So catch us next time. Make sure to like and subscribe. Check out Aaron's YouTube. Check out Aaron's Twitter. You can check out mine as well. And see you guys next time.